Thank you so much for all the incredible music. I don't know if you've noticed this evening, but on the altar we have two roses. And can any of you guess what they represent? Twins, right, Jim? Twins. You can see the happy granddad right back here. Twins. We all get so excited about the birth of a child, right? I mean, seriously. They have complete control over us. Oh, we might think that we control them, but that's not the case. Have you seen how silly and childish we become with a baby? Yeah. So Christmas is about celebrating the birth of the Christ child. But this child grew up, and this child was the light to the world. And when we look at the Greek scriptures, Jesus came to enlighten humanity about what we could become and who we could be. I love light. I've grown up in Florida most all of my life, and the sun shines here almost every day, am I right? I lived in North Carolina for 6 years. I handled the cold fine. The cold didn't bother me. You know what got to me? Was 14, 21, sometimes 30 days with low clouds, no sun. The people there thought I was crazy at some times because the sun would peek through the clouds and I would be the one standing out doing like this, just letting it shine on me. Have any of you ever lived so far north, like Chicago, for example, where the sun comes up around 6:30 in the morning and it looks just the same at 12 noon as it does at 6 a.m.? And the sun sets at 4:30 in the afternoon. It's dark almost all the time, right, Jane? Yeah, light. We love light. Any of you had to live a long period of time without electricity and no lights on in the house? What would it be like for you if you lived in a place that 6 months out of the year it was dark all the time? All the time. The best you could do was a little twilight. The sky. At the turn of the century in 1900s, there was an industrialist in Rjukan, Norway, that wanted to create a fertilizer factory. And he wanted to power it with hydroelectric energy. And he found this river down in the bottom of a valley between two mountains, which was a perfect spot for it. So he built this factory. And it was wonderful because it employed a lot of people. But after a few years, they made an amazing discovery. You see, the valley was here, and there was a huge mountain here and another huge mountain here. And in the wintertime, the sun did this plain right here. It was always behind the mountain. So from September to March, they never got any direct sunlight. So in order to try to help his very depressed workers and townspeople, he even built little cottages up on this mountain over here, and then eventually they built a little sky rail going up so people could just go to the top of a mountain to get a little sunshine every day. In 1913, his bookkeeper came up with an incredible solution to the problem. Why don't we just put giant mirrors on one of the mountains and reflect the sunlight and let it fall down in the valley? It's a beautiful idea, but they didn't have the technology to pull it off until last year, 100 years later, in this little village. It cost $800,000. They built this on top of the mountain, these huge mirrored panels that are powered by the sun, and as the sun is in its low arc, it reflects off those mirrors and it shines down into the town square. It's a miracle. You would not believe how in 1 year it has changed the whole environment of this town. It used to be that people would just put on their coats. It was cold. You didn't say anything to anybody. You just were living in darkness, and everybody was very unhappy. Now the whole town gathers together in the square, and they put a volleyball court there. People would bring out lawn chairs there. They're sitting basking in the sunlight. They have concerts there. I saw one videotape. You can go online and look it up. It's RJUKAN in Norway. And you can look it up. Let the sun shine. Let the sun shine in. They're playing. It's an amazing thing. The whole community changed when it was living in a dark valley that was so dark for so long. And now, during the darkest time of the year, they have light. And it's completely changed who they are. And as I reflect upon my own spiritual journey, and we celebrate the bright star that shone in the sky, that the wise men from the east, the astrologers, they followed. And when we think about how Gabriel and all the angels in their glory and the great light of heaven shone on the shepherds, and they celebrated the birth of this beautiful child, and they went to this place, we celebrate the light. And it says that Jesus is the light of the world. Think about how that could apply to our lives. How many of us live our lives in a deep, narrow, dark valley where the light very seldom ever shines? How many of us live our lives and our decisions and what we do and what we say is driven by this darkness in us rather than the sunlight? One of the things I think is fascinating about the story of this town in Norway, they had to find the means to bring the light into their town. And you know when they did it, how many people protested? It was one of those things, right? Hey, we can bring light into the town. That's a waste of money. Why in the world would you ever want to do that? And think about how in our own spiritual journeys, when we have an opportunity to be enlightened, sometimes we choose to stay in darkness and think that's a good thing. Tonight, we not only celebrate a bright star in the sky that showed us where the Christ child was being born. We'll not only celebrate the angels and the baby in the manger, but we celebrate something even greater than all of that. For within each and every one of us is a divine spark, the light of the same God who created Jesus. And each and every one of us is this glowing, wonderful light of life and intelligence and enlightenment. And sometimes we have to be very clever and industrious if we want to get out of our dark valleys in life and find a way that we can help that light to shine within us, and so that we can celebrate life and shine back. We are a people living in a time when there's not much tolerance for difference. When because of a color of a person's skin, even to this day, they can be rejected and pushed away, demonized. Because of a person's pocketbook, their wealth or their lack of wealth, they can be demonized. Because of one's political affiliation, one can be demonized. Anything that looks different, talks different, that appears different can be demonized. And I'm telling you that the light of this Christ, this light of God, this light within each and every one of us demands that we no longer live in that dark valley, that we find a way to be people of enlightenment, which means we have to be clever, which means we have to be curious, which means we must open up the valleys within us and allow this divine light to shine within us so that we can then reflect it back on the world around us. For we are in a time where it does not matter if you're gay, straight, black, white, brown, yellow, red, everything in between. Whether you're religious, not religious. It does not matter, because we are all children of God and we all have that divine spark within us. And it is our job as enlightened ones, as people who celebrate the birth of this child. We also celebrate his message, that people who were astrologers and from a land far away who had nothing at all to do with Judaism were able to come and be guided to this place. Shepherds who were considered the lowliest of all peoples would never be invited to a party like this, and yet they were some of the first to see this beautiful child. You see, Jesus spent his life breaking down the barriers that we create between each other and our cultures and our nationalism and in the colors of our skin and the languages and our religions and how we interpret those religions. Jesus came breaking those barriers. I heard last night on TV as Frontline was doing a special on Jesus from birth to becoming Christ, and one of the speakers on it talked about how during the time of Paul, they were expecting the eschaton, that God would come in and Jesus would return during their lifetimes and bring on this new powerful state, that God would intervene and they would be once again a glorious country like in the time of David. And then he says, but I believe that Jesus brought in an ethical eschaton. And that really struck me. He says he brought in an eschaton which said, when God says, I'm not to come in miraculously and to intervene and straighten it all out, but each and every one of you who know my light, who know my name, who've experienced my grace, who've experienced my compassion, who've experienced my brilliance and my wisdom, it is up to you as individuals in an ethical eschaton to face those injustices in the world around you and be the light and be the change. So we come together as children of God, celebrating the light of the world that came to be among us. And I want you to know that same light is in each and every one of us and people all around the world. And it's up to us to let it shine so there are no more dark valleys for anyone to walk through ever, ever, ever again. Merry Christmas. God bless you. In order to help us to experience, and before we do this, that's tonight. Tonight, we raised $2,000 for Kiva tonight. I want to help a lot of people. Thank you so much. That's going to help a lot of, you have no idea how this is going to change lives. Your generosity is overwhelming. We are the light of the world because we have the light living within us. So let's celebrate that together now with Silent Night, Holy Night. I'm going to take my candle and light it from the Christ candle. I'm going to share it with the people on the end, and you share the light with one another. And I'm going to share it also up here with the choir. And then we will sing together this beautiful light that has come into the world. And that's a sign that we are almost done here. The suffering is long, and there will be great gnashing of teeth. The world needs enlightenment. It needs to know compassion, so you become the compassion. It needs to know generosity, so you be generous. It needs to know peace, so you become the peace. Go and become what this light has given you a vision to be. God asks nothing more or nothing less. So God bless us, everyone, as we become a blessing to everyone. Merry Christmas.